Marky Bilson back here in conversation with you. You know what a great sports talk show host used to say that? Actually, I don't take calls, so, I sort of do these rants or interview people, and we try to, go on with that. But I mentioned this because Tom Barrasso has just been named to the Hockey Hall of Fame. I think a long overdue honor. Long overdue honor. And as I said, I met Tom Barrasso once. It was the very first interview I ever did in a locker room, just to reset what I had said previously. Professional athlete I had interviewed in a locker room. And I was 19, and I was just, how did it feel to win the game, Mr. Barrasso? That was what I was doing. But he was quite kind to me, as I recall. And Tom Barrasso also, just as a little boy, as a fan, I always liked him because I remember when he won the Vezina Cup with Buffalo, and he really started strong. His rookie year, Vezina Cup's goalie of the year, if you're not familiar. And they'd done a profile for him in Sports Illustrated, and he'd always grown up being a goalie. He played street hockey, with tennis balls and all this, and you don't have full equipment doing that. And so one day he goes to the doctor, and he's playing street hockey with just nothing. He's a goalie, right? With a t-shirt. So his chest has a bunch of bruises on it and all that from, whatever they were using as a puck. Usually they said a tennis ball and all that, but hitting them wherever. So he's kind of beaten up his body and all this, and just some bruises and welts on him and all that. And take your shirt off, young man, so he can do the stethoscope and give us a cough and all that. And doctor saw this and just, oh my, excuse me, could the parents just wait outside? I need to have a talk with your son. What is it? How often do your parents beat you? Thankfully, it came out. No, I'm a hockey goalie. I know I'm a young guy, and all this, but just that devotion at the early age, and now it's going to a trip to Toronto for Tom Barrasso. The other thing I liked about him, shows you how committed he was in high school. He didn't order a high school ring. I didn't order a high school ring, basically because of this story. And I remember it was like, hey, why aren't you, family or whatever it was, why aren't you ordering a high school ring? And he comes up and he says, because the only ring I want is a Stanley Cup ring. And I loved that quote. And just, do I want to, I was like, hell no. I want a World Series ring. I'm not going to make it as a player, but maybe as a broadcaster, something like that, that was two things from being a Tom Barrasso fan early on that really stayed with me. Two stories. But as I said, got a reputation, and I told a couple of stories about it in our previous segment, of being difficult to work with. And this then caused some of his endorsement deal. He had an endorsement deal with a car dealer and all this when he was a goalie with the Penguins and all this. And there was always this sort of feeling of, after a while, he was wearing out his welcome, despite the fact he was a Hall of Fame goalie. And there were some story. I heard one story of a teammate who, Barrasso had gotten surgery for some injury during the course of time. And one of his teammates had said, he didn't have to have that. Now, is that Tom Barrasso skipping out on his team and taking the surgery that he doesn't need? He should play through it? Or is that a teammate being petty? Usually when you start saying that your teammate should play through injuries, you're viewed as something of an unsympathetic figure, and how would you like, and all that. Tom Barrasso, they didn't in Pittsburgh feel that way. He did not get that reputation. He was, he's jumping out on his team and all that, That was what had become with Barrasso. Rightly or wrongly, rightly or wrongly. And I'm kind of, but where I'm going with this is how important is that to you as a fan? Yeah, how important is that to you as a fan? Because I got to tell you something. The fact that, maybe he didn't get along with someone in the media, or maybe there was a teammate and he was being petty, or the teammate was being petty, didn't mean that he wasn't the final piece of the puzzle to 2 Stanley Cup championships. And turning around what had been a woe-begone franchise into now a franchise that is thought to be one of the big winners in the NHL. I mean, they just had a streak of 16 straight playoff berths broken up. Yes, I know. Everybody, what? How did they miss the playoff? Earlier, I was talking about the lack of importance of the regular season and all this, but yeah, there was some question. I was thinking of, the Penguins finished 1 point back, Florida Panthers for the final playoff berth this past year. What would have happened if the Penguins had gotten in? Could they, with Crosby and Malkin, have defeated the Boston Bruins in the first round? And if they did, would that team not have been more suited to potentially win a Stanley Cup as an 8 seed as the Kings did 10 years ago or so? But I am, like I said, of the opinion now, can we just sort of not expand, but have fewer teams in the playoffs? I mean, really have teams play for championships here, not play for first place, not for 8th. Can't we get all this? I mean, you have 7 games after a record-setting season to knock out the Boston Bruins, just like in 2019. The same thing, really, with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Very dissatisfying. But how dissatisfying is it with you if the hometown hero has a reputation for being, let's say, prickly? And I wonder, why do you care about that? Especially in an era where a lot of times we're not necessarily rooting for the home team. I mean, I'm big on rooting for the home team. Don't get me wrong. I mean, all this. I know if you're, from Detroit and you move to Miami and you still want to root for the Tigers, that's one thing. But I've always got, the Dallas Cowboys fan from Connecticut. Yeah, that guy, that's something wrong with that. Yeah, I get it, and I think once one of the Lad magazines spoke of that person's annoyance. But you can do that nowadays. And the point being is that you're probably not going to meet, ever, these athletes that you cheer for. Why does it matter with you if they have a contentious relationship with the press? I'm with the press. I don't want a contentious relationship. Let's face it, okay? But at the same time, I realize, you want to see the athlete do well. Tom Barrasso and this writer didn't get along. You know what? Tom Barrasso had 49 saves and a 1-0 victory against Chicago Blackhawks in the 3rd game of the 1992 Stanley Cup playoffs. That's why I like Tom Barrasso. And the fact that he didn't get along with this other person who's somewhat bombastic, well, that's what happens sometimes. But I never could understand why people were saying that these great athletes, I don't like them, they're jerks. Have you ever met them? No. Like I said, having a Pittsburgh ties, Barry Bonds was famous for this. Barry Bonds is the greatest baseball player since Henry Aaron? Why does he have a negative reputation? Oh, sure. We've seen the interviews and some of the prickliness and all that. But at the same time, I do remember 2002 World Series, and he was having the series of his life, but the Giants were trailing. He just goes to the media, "What else do you want out of me?" And he had a point. And this is one time voted People Magazine's 50 most beautiful people. Why are we harping on Jim Leland yelled at him that one time? And why in Pittsburgh, because the Pirates haven't finished in first place since Barry Bonds left, are they championing that? Makes no sense to me whatsoever. I'm Marky Bilson. Stay tuned. We'll talk later.